Hello, welcome to the Searchlight podcast. We are talking about Ripples of Kindness, a pandemic tale, in today's episode. During the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, amid fear and uncertainty, humanity found solace in acts of generosity and kindness. One such story came from a small town where a man, let's call him Alex, made an extraordinary decision that touched the lives of many others. Alex was a dedicated family man with a loving wife and 2 young kids. However, he also had an old neighbor, Mrs. Lola, who lived alone and was especially vulnerable to the virus due to her age and underlying medical issues. Mrs. Lola has no relatives around to assist her with everyday duties such as grocery shopping and housework. As the virus spread and lockdowns were implemented, Alex was forced to make a difficult decision. With little means and the risk of contracting the virus, he felt he couldn't support both his family and Mrs. Lola. He couldn't ignore his neighbor's call for help, though. Every day, Alex would put on his mask and gloves, following strict hygiene rules as he went grocery shopping, picking up medications for Mrs. Lola. He even made time to check in on her, providing companionship from a safe distance to help ease her loneliness. In a twist, Alex's wife, Emma, proposed a rotating schedule with other neighbors to assist Mrs. Lola. They formed a small WhatsApp support group, and each family took turns providing Mrs. Lola with food and other essentials. This coordinated approach lowered Alex's workload and assured Mrs. Lola received continued care while avoiding overexposure to the virus. While helping Mrs. Lola clean her storage space, Alex uncovered an old, dusty box. Inside, he discovered a collection of handwritten recipes and letters. Mrs. Lola had previously worked as a recognized chef in a well-known restaurant. She told Alex stories about her history, and they bonded over her recollections and dishes. Inspired by her stories, Alex proceeded to learn and duplicate her recipes, discovering a new passion for cooking. Meanwhile, Alex's family enthusiastically supported his involvement, seeing the seriousness of the situation and the need of assisting those in need. They changed their habits and developed strategies to make their own home life function, despite the increased burden. Their home became filled with the aroma of new foods as Alex practicing Mrs. Lola's recipes, offering a sense of joy and routine amid the difficult times. As the pandemic progressed, the support group widened its scope. They started delivering meals not only to Mrs. Lola, but also to other elderly and isolated members of the neighborhood. This idea expanded into a community kitchen project led by Alex and based on Mrs. Lola's recipes. Months passed, and the ties built by these acts of compassion grew stronger. The pandemic subsided, but the spirit of solidarity persisted. Alex's selflessness, backed by his family and neighbors, had triggered a chain reaction of compassion and kindness. In an unexpected twist, Mrs. Lola's long-lost only grandson, Jack, contacted Alex after knowing about the community kitchen through social media. Jack was separated from his family, but the stories about Alex's kindness impacted him deeply. He reached out, and with Alex's support, he was able to reunite with Mrs. Lola. Mrs. Lola was overjoyed to see Jack again, and Alex felt even more fulfilled as a result of their reunion. Alex's story demonstrates the extremes that people will go to for the sake of others, demonstrating that true heroism is found not in spectacular actions, but in the modest acts of compassion that bring us all together. His decision to prioritize his elderly neighbor's well-being, which was supported by his community, demonstrates the power of empathy and humanity's fundamental goodness. It serves as a reminder that by coming together and supporting one another, we can overcome hardship and build a better, more compassionate society for all. As we wrap up this episode, always remember, it is more blessed to give than to receive.